Okay, guys, so I'm gonna re-upload this to YouTube so that it's that, so it's there saved in a proper format. I've got some little things to show you. I made a meme.
That is so
Poggers.
Gretchen, stop trying to make
Venthyr Fire, Sun King's Blessing, Pyroclasm.
happen. It's not going to happen.
So yeah, as we were saying, everyone's playing fucking Night Fae, what's it called? Night Fae Fire. I have created a little documentation here. Let me open up my disclaimer. I'm gonna read this so that everyone understands what's happening here, okay? For those of you that don't know what an anecdotal guide is, or the word anecdotal, it basically means that this is based off of my personal experience, my personal testing. This has nothing to do with like, I can prove it via math and like stats or whatever. This is purely just me playing it for the past 2 weeks, testing it in different content and coming to the conclusion that I do think it's viable for specific things. Is it more or less viable? Is it more viable than Night Fae Fire? No, I don't think so. Just to get that out of the way. I think Night Fae Fire is more all-purpose than this. But I do think that this build is better than Night Fae Fire for certain situations, which I will explain. So here is my documentation. Move this over, and I'll move this over. Okay, so again, this is based off my own personal testing. Very little math, if at all, has gone into this. Now I'd like to give some credit to Osiris, who actually came up with the name for this build, the Chef's Kiss, because we are constantly baking Pyroclasm procs. We are constantly baking big, fat, juicy pyroblasts. It just kind of went well with the build. Is it moving on screen for you guys? Yes, perfect. All right, so the pros and cons to this build. We'll go through the pros first. So I wrote insane single target with a little asterisk there. So in my testing, I feel like this build excels very, very well on single target. The reason there's an asterisk there is and with a lot of the points that are here, the single target is very dependent on how well you manage your procs and how well you're able to manage your going into your mini combustion phase. Mini combustion meaning your stacks of Sun King's Blessing. Knowing the fight and knowing if you're going to have that, because the proc itself lasts 15 seconds, but the stack counter up to 8 lasts 30 seconds. So you can use that time to kind of like float between like, okay, if you want to go into a boss, like let's say Painsmith, right? When he's up in the intermission, he's up there for quite a while. I'll use Mythic example because there's actually something to hit there. So, or even on Heroic, sometimes there's balls that you can, like you have to dodge while the intermission is going on. If you go into that intermission with say 7 stacks and you have a baked on, like you have a Pyroblast proc waiting, you can throw your Pyroblast late and refresh the stack so that you can get your 8 stacks at a full 30 seconds. That way you go into the boss when he comes down with your Sun King's Blessing combustion ready. If let's say you don't have combustion, like your big combust is on cooldown, you can go into that phase with a mini combust, which just like keeps your sustained damage a little bit higher. So that's why I wrote a little asterisk. Like it requires a lot of like knowledge about how the build plays and your procs and stuff, but it has the potential to be very, very, very strong on single target. We'll go over video examples in a little bit. Okay, second point, very good AoE with cooldowns. Comparatively to Night Fae Fire, I don't think it's as good. Just me remembering how strong Night Fae Fire was with shifting power in your rotation. I don't think it's as strong, but it is very strong for AoE. When you have all your cooldowns, you use mirrors on a target that's going to live fairly long. So let's say you pull 7 mobs, one of them has 1 million health, the other ones have 500k. You'll put your Mirrors of Torment on the 1 million health mob, and you'll just do your AoE rotation. And keep in mind, mirrors is like a mini Lucid. Think of it like a mini Lucid. It's easier to think of it that way. Essentially, What it does is whenever the target attacks, casts a spell, uses an ability, you will gain 6 seconds of refund on your Fire Blast charge. Meaning that with haste, if you pop Lust, if you get a PI, if you have all your cooldowns up, your Fire Blast charges are going to regenerate a lot faster than you're used to. So that adds to the whole like being able to spam flame strikes and stuff. And all your instant casts and just dumping your abilities. You still do tons of really good AoE damage with cooldowns. I still don't think it's as good as Venthyr Fire, purely because shifting power can do tons of damage in and of itself, and you're not actually, it's like an extra AoE ability. For this, you're using you're using everything to do your AoE rotation. And again, the asterisk, meaning that if Sun King's Blessing wasn't broken, it would be even better, because Flame Strike, consuming a hot streak with Flame Strike would contribute towards your legendary, but it doesn't. So you're getting out of that AoE with cooldown situation pretty empty-handed, and you have to like farm your Sun King's Blessing legendary back up, which really sucks. Third point, incredibly fun playstyle, Legion-ish vibes. If any of you guys played Legion Fire Mage, you'll remember that it was very enjoyable for the fact that combustion lasted incredibly long. You had tons of time to hardcast your Pyroblast during your combust. You were able to chain big, thick, juicy Pyroblasts inside of your windows, and it just felt pretty smooth. I feel like this is kind of similar to that. It's not anywhere close to being as smooth, but it still kind of gives you that feeling of you're hardcasting a Pyroblast that's going to hit really fucking hard. That's just kind of the playstyle of Pyroclasm, but with this it feels a little bit better because you're rewarded for actually hard casting your Pyroblast. Instead of Pyroclasm proccing, you cast it and then maybe it crits, maybe it doesn't. This feels more rewarding in the sense that you'll get combustion every once in a while from it. I added off meta, if that gives you a hard on or something. If you like playing things that are not really popular and kind of like the underdog, maybe doesn't perform exceptionally well but has the potential to be very good in niche situations, maybe that appeals to you. Allows you to multi-spec Frost and Fire. I think this will appeal to a lot of people because our situation in Shadowlands is such that if you want to play Arcane, the best thing is to play Kyrian. And if you want to play Arcane as Venthyr, kind of blows. If you want to play Arcane as Night Fae, blows. So this kind of allows you to go Frost if you don't feel like it's performing for the situation you're doing, and then go back to Fire for whatever else you want to do. If it's like Tyrannical Weeks, or maybe you want to play it on Guardian for some reason, you feel like going it, you just literally switch your spec and you're good to go. And what's cool, I didn't write this down, but Fire for this uses Theatar, where in my testing it seems a lot higher than anyways. Nadia is used for Frost, so you're actually able to keep your conduits the way they are, and maybe you want to change out, like, I don't know, Siphoned Malice for Master Flame for Mythic Plus or something. Maybe it seems higher for you, so you switch out one conduit instead of switching out all your conduits every time you switch specs. You can literally just switch specs and you're good to go, which is, I think, pretty cool in the Shadowlands vibe that we're playing right now, where covenants are just super restrictive. I think it's kind of important, and maybe that is incentive for you to switch to it. So that's it for pros. The cons: below average AoE without cooldowns. You are kind of resorting back to either A, hardcasting flame strikes, which is not good if you're playing with Sun King's Blessing, because you are doing nothing to generate stacks towards Sun King's Blessing. So your below average AoE without cooldowns, again, has an asterisk, because if you are good at managing your stacks for Sun King's Blessing, your AoE sustain outside of using your big combustion is actually pretty good, because you're getting like 6 seconds of combustion every so often, and maybe more often if you're really good at proccing them or really good at maintaining your stacks. So you go into trash packs without your big combust, but you go into the trash pack with maybe like 7 stacks of Sun King's Blessing, and then you have combustion for 6 seconds, and maybe you have 2-3 charges of Phoenix Flames, maybe you have full stacks of Fire Blast. So your average ends up kind of being good over the course of maybe a dungeon or whatnot. But again, the asterisk is there because it requires a lot of like knowledge and prep about, okay, I'm going to the next pack, it has 5 mobs, it's relatively big, I'm going into it with 4 stacks. That means I'm gonna have to fireball for like 5 minutes before I get my combust. Or you leave the last pack with 7 stacks and you go into combust basically right away when it gets pulled. So it's dependent on how good you are at managing your Sun King's Blessing stacks, but it can be good. But it's generally below average because you have to farm with Fireball. Okay, not Night Fae. I feel like there's a lot of people saying like, oh, everyone's going Fire Night Fae. The reason, in my opinion, is because most top-end players are done progression now. And there's no real reason to be Arcane or Frost unless they think it's the best or they enjoy it. Most mages, in my opinion, prefer playing Fire. Generally speaking, I think Fire it just has the most, has the biggest fan base behind it. I don't think I'm wrong in saying that. I think a lot of mages that play Mage enjoy Fire the most. Generally speaking, obviously some people don't agree with that, but that's fine. But yeah, not being Night Fae, I would consider it one of the bigger cons because, again, this is not really the way you probably want to be playing Fire unless any of the pros appeal to you. Lacks something else for it to shine above XYZ. I wrote this because, again, in my testing, I don't think that it's something that is like a clear winner in any given scenario, aside from single target. And even at single target, I feel like it's not a very clear winner. I feel like it's like, okay, he's playing this, but he could just do this and achieve the same result. Could you achieve the same single target DPS as Night Fae? I don't know. I haven't tested Sun King's Blessing with Pyroclasm on Night Fae. If anyone has, feel free to reach out and give me your thoughts, but I don't think that this is like some hidden secret thing. I think this is just an alternative way to play Fire right now. Perhaps the biggest con, you are playing with a broken legendary. If you have not watched my most recent video, the legendary has 2 main things about it that make it incredibly broken in a bad way and a big turnoff for a lot of people. The first thing is that it states you need to consume 8 hot streaks and your next non-instant cast Pyroblast within 15 seconds will grant you combustion. It is in fact 9 hot streaks that you need to use. I will demonstrate for those that have not seen the video. We'll use Firestarter to make this very easy. So you'll see here the counter at the bottom is going to go to 8. Turn this back on. 5, 6, 7. Now, this is my 8th hot streak. After I consume this, my next non-instant cast Pyroblast should give me combustion. But it's not going to because it's fucked. You need to consume 9 hot streaks and then you will receive the legendary effect, which will in turn give you combustion. Now that's the first thing that sucks about this. The second thing that sucks about this is after consuming 8 hot streaks, this is a hot streak. I have consumed it. It does not give me a stack towards Sun King's Blessing. Now, I am a big fucking believer in the fact that if they fix that component of the legendary where you were able to consume a hot streak with Flame Strike, that this build would be exponentially better for Mythic Plus. The reason being is that you mostly Flame Strike on big packs in Mythic Plus, and getting out of that pack with 8 stacks or almost combustion basically would just make the build feel a lot better in Mythic Plus. If they fix any of that stuff, great. I think the Flame Strike component is more important than the hot streak component, but they both ideally need to be fixed for it to be more competitive. All right. Requires a covenant change if not Venthyr. Any of you familiar with swapping to Arcane from Fire? Obviously, you know the rules. You can't stay in the current covenant, so if you have to switch to Venthyr to play this, consider that one of the bigger cons, I guess, if you don't like grinding Renown. And last but not least, people will think you're trolling. Good luck getting into groups, bro. I have literally been kicked from a group when they've seen I'm Venthyr and Fire and wearing Sun King's Blessing and had Pyroclasm on my talents. People don't know about this and they think that you're trolling. And I mean, I don't blame them. I don't know if I saw this in a group I was trying to push keys with, I'd be like, what the fuck are you doing? And I'd probably remove the guy too. So if you are someone that LFGs their keys pretty often, you might have a little bit of a harder time finding groups until people realize that it's actually pretty good on single target. All right, let's move on to video stuff. So I've got three little demonstrations here about what this build does really well. All right, so this is a key I did yesterday. I did an 18 the other side. Move this. And it's tyrannical, meaning bosses have a lot more health. It was my belief that this build would do really well on bosses after, you know, playing it for so often and kind of seeing the damage on single target. Hakar is like one of those bosses that is kind of cancer on tyrannical weeks. Has a lot of health. It's pretty much just a DPS check. You need a lot of damage to kill Hakar. So this video kind of just shows what the damage is like on Hakar. Now, hold on a second. Let me pause really quick. So before people ask, the opener I've been using, I haven't even been going with the precast. I've literally just been doing mirrors on the pull with 2 Fire Blast charges right in the combustion pyro. I don't see a reason why you wouldn't, like why you'd prefer doing this over, like, let's say pre-casting Fireball. It's the same thing as Venthyr Fire. You can choose to do your combustion in the initial Fireball to get your 2 Fire Blast charges of Infernal Cascade, or you can choose to do a precast and then roll off of that whether or not you get a crit. I've just been strictly doing mirrors on the pull. So just to put that into perspective. And the goal with this kind of opener here is you want to get a Pyroclasm proc after your combustion, and you want to have Sun King's Blessing ready, which you will because you're using instant casts. So you have your initial combustion, and then you have your Sun King's Blessing combustion. And if everything goes well, you should basically get 16 seconds of combustion. And if you have a ton of haste and you have a lot of procs or whatever, you'll be fairly well into your second Sun King's Blessing combustion, which is really good. And it generally feels pretty good. Like over the course of this fight, I think I got 5 combustions, which is pretty nuts, given that your damage out of combustion is pretty fucking solid. One of the concerns a lot of people had, I think, was that it's not very mobile. I don't really have a problem with this build being mobile. Yes, you have to hardcast pyros, but generally you find a time to cast them. There's never been really an issue where you can't unless it's a very heavy movement encounter, which is not really that predominant. So you'll see here I have my combustion again. I have a couple of Phoenix Flames charges. I got an instant cast. Whatever you don't end up using, you can just fill with Scorch, just like normal. I think it was 4 combustions then. But anyway, it's very strong on single target. It's actually impressive how strong it can be on single target. In my opinion, I think it's really good for single target. Okay, next showcase. This is a clip from Heroic Fate Scribe. Okay, so this is one of the situations I was talking about in the pros thing, where managing your stacks is going to be incredibly important in this being successful. This is an example of that. So if any of you know Faithscribe remotely well, you'll know that in the intermission phase, there's 2 ads that spawn. And the boss is going to be released from his little intermission break when the runes are completed, regardless of if the ads are live or not. So to kind of showcase how managing your stacks and cooldowns work with this, this is the intermission phase. You'll see that I have, I guess in this example, it's not the same as my UI now, but at the bottom right of my cast bar, I have my Pyroblast proccing combustion from Sun Kings ready. And I'm leaving, the ads are dying basically. So the intermission's about to be over. So I've got my charges ready. I'm waiting for the boss to get out of intermission, and I'm going to precast it so I don't waste the proc. The boss is going to leave intermission. We're going to go into combustion with Sun Kings. I'm going to dump most of my instant casts into it because I have mirrors. And then I'm going to cast Pyroblast because I have a Pyroclasm proc going into my big combustion. And then I'm going to get out of this combustion and go into another combustion. So it's 20 full seconds of combustion with lust, with potion. This is like why it's the chef's kiss. This is like, it feels godly when you pull this off. It's really, really good. Everyone in this raid is like hella geared. This is my main raid. We're just doing heroic. They're all like 245, 246. I think I was 15th or 16th when the intermission started, and we just broke like 5th or 6th on the DPS meter. We got 4 combustions off from 30 to dead. It's very potent. If you are able to kind of execute that damage, it's not only does it feel fucking incredible, but it's a lot of fun. It's really, really cool. And the last video I wanted to showcase was kind of AoE with cooldowns, since I know a lot of people asked, like, you know, what's AoE with cooldowns like with this build since you're not using shifting power. This is just a pull from the other side. It's the first pull before you pull the what's this called, like the fucking anima guy. So it's not a huge pull, but it's still enough to give you an idea of like kind of the damage that you're looking at. So I think 3 packs or 4 packs. So you'll see I mirrors one of the bigger mobs, and then it doesn't really matter what happens here as long as that mob gets off all the mirrors. If it lives long enough to cast them all, then it's great. And after watching this a few times, I kind of realized that I probably shouldn't have been hitting that target, but if you're flame striking, it's not a big deal. So the AoE with cooldowns is not terrible. It's nothing, you know, to write home about, but it's good. It does what it needs to do. Is it stronger than Night Fae? I don't think so, but it's still good. And that's kind of it for video stuff. Let me just see if I had anything else written here. No, that's it. So that's kind of it as far as like the guide goes, I guess. I didn't really have any like logs to go over because it doesn't really fucking mean anything. It's heroic and whatever. The last little bit of testing I really want to do is in Mythic. I haven't been able to do any Mythic because my guild's on Sylvanas and I'm benched. So if I do get into Mythic for their re-clears and stuff, I will obviously be, you know, doing more stuff with this, and I will kind of keep you guys updated as to how it's performing. It's not really going to be incredibly accurate purely because I'm behind on gear comparatively to the rest of my raid team, but it'll still be worth doing, I think. And while we're at it, I kind of have it in my head that there are certain bosses that this build is going to be very good on, and I want to kind of prove myself wrong or right. Regardless, I don't care if I'm wrong or right. I just want to know. So out of sheer testing on heroic, I feel like, and kind of knowing the fights on Mythic, I feel like this build can be very good on Remnant. It can be good on Soul Render. I feel like it would be excellent on Paintsmith, Mythic especially, with the ads. provided that the boss is like pushed at a normal pace. If the boss is pushed really quickly, like on heroic, your cooldowns don't end up lining up very well. But if you're able to go into like out of the intermission, if you're able to have your combust for Painsmith, whether it's Sun King's combustion or your normal combustion, it's great. Guardian, also a very good fight for this, provided you don't get targeted with like every mechanic in the game. Fate Scribe, again, it can be very, very good. It just requires a lot of prep. Like you have to know the timings, you have to like be ready to know when the intermission's ending, kind of thing. Kel'Thuzad, exact same thing. You need to know the timings. You need to be ready for like the ad spawn from the silence zones, all that stuff. It can be very good. And Sylvanas, I think it's very good as well. I think fire in general for Sylvanas is really good, purely because P1 you're completely blasting with Firestarter for most of the phase. Phase 2 you have combustion for almost every platform that matters, whenever you can actually DPS Sylvanas. And P3 again, combust for every platform almost. So, and more so for Night Fae. I feel like Night Fae is probably better for Sylvanas than this, because your combustion's most likely going to be up for every platform guaranteed. So yeah, if you guys were curious about what bosses this playstyle is really good on, that's it. Is the guy going to release on YouTube? Yeah, I'm going to re-upload this to YouTube so that people see it. This is, I didn't want to do like a whole edited video for this because it's, again, anecdotal. This is purely based off of like me playing it. But I know people were curious about how it plays and stuff. So, yeah. Lemonix, thank you for the T1 sub, man. I appreciate it. Unfortunately, I can't really show like much on a training dummy because mirrors doesn't proc on a training dummy. But if you are going to test this or play it, you want to have some sort of way to segregate the difference between your stacks towards disciplinary command and the actual proc itself, so that you're not confusing yourself. The counter has a different spell ID than the actual proc itself. So the spell ID for the thing here is 33314, whatever it is. And then the other one's 333315. So if you need to enter spell IDs to separate the difference between the two procs, those are them. The way that you use mirrors on this, or at least the way I've been using mirrors, think of it as a way to regenerate your fire blast charges and not as a way of doing DPS. I found myself oftentimes using mirrors before going into a Sun King's Blessing combustion when my big combustion is coming off of cooldown. So if you're going into a mini combust and then into a big combust and you have no fire blast charges, it's better to use mirrors prior to those two things than to hold it. Reason being is that you'll end up force feeding your Pyroclasm procs in your Sun King's Blessing combustion. You want to go into your combust ideally with a Pyroclasm proc. It's just more initial burst damage, and you're fitting in more pyros into your combust, which is always good. Obviously on the pull, mirrors of torment with your combust always. When they line up, you always want to use them together. But they're inevitably going to be desynced because this is 2 minutes. This is 1.5 minutes. So, yeah. Use Mirrors of Torment to regenerate Fire Blast charges when you are empty and you're going into either your big combust, ideally, primarily, or your Sun King's Blessing combust. And I guess some niche little tips, like in Mythic Plus, it really sucks that you have to fireball mobs for your combustion. But when mobs are dying, instead of like just scorch flame striking, just you like ideally what you want to be doing is scorch pyroing them if you're playing with Sun King's Blessing, because you want to get some stacks towards the legendary so you can go into the next pack with combust. That's another tip that I've found pretty useful in Mythic Plus, because otherwise, since the legendary doesn't fucking consume flame strike hot streaks, you have to kind of use them on pyroblasts. It kind of forces you to do that. But if anyone has like more questions, feel free to ask me when this is on YouTube. If you guys want to write in the comments or like ask more questions about it, I'll try to answer them as best as I can. And once again, this is a guide for this. This is just me relating the information I've gathered over the past 2 weeks of playing it. I found it a lot of fun, and I'm not going to be switching to Night Fae. I think I'm going to stay with this until I at least see some Mythic with it. And then I'll make a final kind of conclusion as to where it stands. I think it has potential in niche situations, and in the situations that it's at least strong in for single target. I think it can be really good. And I want to kind of see it through to the end before I switch off. But yeah, that's it. Stats, gear, trinkets. Oh. Stats, gear, trinkets. Stats don't exist. There's no guide in the world that's ever going to tell you this is the stats you want and it's going to be accurate, aside from like really stupid shit like shatter cap and stuff. If you are playing this, sim it. It'll tell you what stats are good for you. This currently sims better than my disciplinary command at equal item level, 262. For whatever reason, it sims higher. The stats are what the stats tell me. I haven't, so I'll be honest, I tested this with crit. I tested this with a full crit setup. And I played it for a few days just to kind of feel if, you know, more crit meaning more hot streak procs, meaning more combustion uptime. It worked and it didn't, because you're missing like a lot, everything else, right? You have no haste, you have no mastery, no verse. So like you're getting a lot of crit, but you're leaving out a lot of everything else. Is it worth it? I don't think so. Unless you have like giga amounts of fucking crit. Chorus gives you 369%, I think Chorus gives you 9% crit, and then if you were to add like something like the ocular gland or the KT trinket, that would be even more crit. There's ways you can kind of like giga test it if you really want to. You can just wear like a ton of crit gear. You get Theatar to give you crit. It's an extra 3%. You wear crit food. Like there's a bunch of ways you can get tons of crit, and you can test it yourself. I think it was fun. It was valuable information in me finding out whether or not it was worth it or not. I've kind of just found that simming it works better. As far as gear goes, again, everything is very gear dependent, but I wasn't seeing results with this until I got to around like where I'm at now with gear. Like good trinkets. I don't even think Hymnal is good for this. Ideally what you would use is a badge and like maybe a changeling. A badge is probably going to be really good for this. I'm assuming a good badge, like a 246 badge. I think that's ideally what you would want to use. The fact that it doesn't work on Flame Strike till it's middle of the planet, yeah, it's very, very annoying. I don't understand why it hasn't been fixed. It's been reported repeatedly on the PTR. I've also reported it repeatedly. Not being fixed. So maybe we'll see it be fixed in a future update thing, but I wouldn't rely on it. If you guys end up trying it, if you're already Venthyr for Frost and you have some fucking Soul Ash to spend, make a Sun King's Blessing and try it before you switch to Night Fae or you go Arcane or whatever. It's worth it, in my opinion, purely based on how fun it is. Dare I say I'm enjoying it more than when I played Night Fae Fire, because I played it for a full fucking tier, right? It's nice to have a change of pace to play Fire. It's nice to play like a different play style. I don't think we've used Pyroclasm since Legion. I don't think Pyroclasm has been like a viable alternative since Legion. Is it viable now? Pretty subjective. But yeah, it's nice to have a change of pace with Fire. I think it's cool. Same with Arcane. Like the Arcane, the burn conserve Arcane version is boring to me, but it's nice to see that, you know, Kyrian Arcane with Arcane Harmony is nice. Like it's a nice change of pace. I'm sure for people that play Arcane, I feel like they would agree. It's nice to have a different way to play the spec that you like. So this is why I'm enjoying it. Keep in mind, I've been playing a Fire Mage for like fucking 10 years. So for me, my adoration towards it might be a little bit different comparatively to you guys who maybe don't play Fire as their main spec, or maybe play it because it's flavor of the month or whatever. Me, it's just, I play Fire all the time, and it's nice to play something different. That's it. Can you show the rotation on dummy? I can, but mirrors does not work on trained dummies. It doesn't refund you Fire Blasts whatsoever, but I can show you without it. It doesn't really matter. I'll cast it anyway. But yeah, keep in mind, I'm not going to be generating nearly as much like pyro procs in my combust window as I would with mirrors on a normal mob or a normal boss. Normally, the boss would probably consume, you'd get like 2 extra fire blast charges on a boss on your opener, and you'd have 1 extra proc like after when you're going into Sun Kings. But yeah, we'll just do it just to say we did it. So again, like I was saying before, I normally just cast Mirrors of Torment right on the pull. I've been doing a little bit of both, actually. I've been kind of casting Fireball first and then going into Mirrors. If you get the crit, then you just Fire Blast once. If you don't, you Fire Blast twice during Mirrors. But yeah, anyway, okay. Enough talking. Let's go. So 1 Fire Blast probably would have been refunded by now, so you'd have an extra 1 to extend.
Don't move.
So now you're going into your Sun Kings. You'd have more Fire Blast charges here. Yeah, I'm just going to use Scorch to fill. So you generally leave that second little combust with like 6 or 7 stacks. So your next combustion is going to happen pretty quickly. But yeah. Mirrors not being a thing on training dummies is very, very tilting. But it is what it is. Also, something I didn't mention, you want to generally use your Rune of Power when you have a Pyroclasm proc and you have your Sun King's Legendary proccing Combustion. That's your biggest amount of burst that you're going to get out of this. But yeah. Pyroclasm can store 2 charges, so sometimes it's going to fall off, but if you cast another Pyro like that, it'll give you another stack, which is great. And if you're close to your Sun Kings, you can generally try to hold it and see if you can squeeze it out. But no, sometimes it just doesn't work. Umbrella's a huge damage boost. Yeah, I mean, getting I don't know how much mastery this gives you. It's a fuck ton. My mastery's at 32% with Umbrella and Mini Combust. It's pretty fat. So you'll see here, I've got Mirrors off cooldown. Combust is in 20 seconds. There's no point in using it right now. You want to go into your next combustion, ideally, with like midway stacks, so you're not wasting time on this. So I've got Combust in 8 seconds. Here you'd use Mirrors, and you generate your Fire Blast charges going back into Combust. By the time your combustion comes up, you'll have like 2-3 stacks. You'll be good. And then you'll go into your main combustion, and then when you leave combustion, you'll have Sun King's Blessing procced. That's how you do it generally. So this Pyroblast here, what we're going to do is hold it for this Sun King's Blessing Legendary. Going to drop a rune. You're going to cast your Pyroblast with your Sun Kings. Pyroclasm's here. You're going to go into this combust with it. It's going to refresh Pyroblast. It's nice. When it chains like that, it's beautiful. So now you can just cast your Pyroclasms and you're fine. So when you play this long enough, you start to feel like this like rhythm to it. I mean, obviously it's not always the same because you're not always critting your fireballs, but like you'll have, you know, 2-3 Sun King's Blessing combustions, and you'll have a big combust, and you'll start to feel the rhythm of like holding a Pyroclasm charge to go into your combust, and then go into combust with it, and then all of a sudden you're leaving combust and another one procs. Like has got a really nice flow to it. So this is the situation where you want to use rune. You have Pyroclasm, you got Sun Kings ready. In this situation, you can use a Phoenix Flames to couple it. You get a Pyroblast off that. So this is the situation here where you're close to Sun Kings. You're low on Fire Blast charges. You'd want to Mirrors. This is what I've been doing. You'd want to Mirrors here to generate some Fire Blast charges before you go into your Sun Kings, which gives you some leeway going into your big combustion. So like at this point, you'd probably have 2 charges. Maybe you're about to cap. It helps you be able to force proc your Sun Kings.
Don't move.
And get out of it, you know, relatively healthy. So this situation, you have Pyroclasm. You have Combust coming up, right? You want to cast your Pyroclasm and go into Combust with it. That's something you want to do. You have like tons of time to be able to cast it, so it's fine.
Move.
And you're gonna leave this combust. You're gonna have Sun Kings. You'll rune. You'll use your Sun Kings. And anything you don't have when like instant casts or whatever, you'll just fill with Scorch. That's it. Playing Night Fae for this build is just better. I mean, I don't know if you can play Pyroclasm Sun Kings on Night Fae. I haven't played it. This is an anecdotal guide. Like, I have no idea about that stuff. All I'm doing is relaying my information playing Venthyr. If you want to try this with Night Fae, sure. I feel like Mirrors of Torment has a lot of synergy with this build. Night Fae can also be good. But that's just me thinking back to what Shifting Power was like. That's not me playing it. I won't know if this is good with Night Fae until I play Night Fae. But yeah. Mirrors has really good synergy with this build. It gives you back Fire Blast charges that you need, because you need Fire Blast charges to make Hot Streaks. And Hot Streaks feed your Legendary. It just feels like they all kind of mesh together. It's really good. But yeah, speaking of Umbrella, the reason you play Theotar gives you at the party favors level, gives you the Mad Duke's T, which gives you 3% of a stat. It has a chance to give you 3% int, which is big. That's the one you want, ideally, is 3% int. But if you don't get int, you can get 3% crit, haste, mastery, verse. You can get any of those three. And then you have Umbrella, which gives you 550 mastery, which is absolutely like so much. It's big, and it procs fairly often. It'll proc off of Shimmer, but it's nice because it procs your Shimmer where you land and not where you started. So you'll Shimmer into your mastery, which is cool. For single target, your sims are going to tell you what's correct, but Infernal Cascade, Control Destruction, Siphon Malice sim the best for me. Yeah. That's pretty much it. In all of my sims I've done, with regardless of like what level Conduit I've used, Nagia is just not better. Even though you might think that it's better, because you get haste, and then here you get 20% increased crit or verse, which is, it sounds nuts, but it just sims not as good. Dauntless Duelist simmed closer, but yeah, you're losing a potency Conduit. Theotar is just the way to go. And Exquisite Ingredients, by the way, like as a side note, is actually insane. It gives you so much like random stuff that you actually use, like herbs and stuff. It's crazy. Just like a quality of life thing. But yeah. I'm going to try to use with Night Fae and use Shifting Power refill charges before small bust. Also, this would further push Venthyr Fire bust timer back to 1 minute flat. I don't see how it would do more than Night Fae already does for your combustion timer. Like, I guess you'd be able to use your Phoenix Flame charges more, which leads to more power loss. Like, maybe it's better for cooldown. I don't know. Like, your Night Fae is already like pushing it with Discipline of the Grove. I'm trying to think like why this build would give you more more cooldown reduction on your combustion. I don't see it with Night Fae. I think Night Fae is like perma 1 minute 20 cooldown on combustion. If you're like really rocking with crits and stuff. It's not going to be a minute, but it'll be close. But I haven't played in a while, so. Am I late to the fire explanation? Yeah, I'm gonna re-upload it to YouTube, Trim. Is there anything else I wanted to talk about for this? I don't think so. I don't think so. As far as sims go, I don't know, whatever it's worth. Maybe it helps some of you out there like watching. I sim for 9,000 with this. And like I said, this sims higher for me than Disciplinary Command. Okay, as Venthyr, this sims higher for me than 262 Disciplinary Command on my ring slocket. With my 252 gloves that I have. These. So this, imagine this Disciplinary Command ring was 262. This sims less with Kindling. Like this. This sims less than my Pyroclasm, what's it called thing? This. So I don't know what that means. But yeah. Yeah, the combo of like mirrors and this and Pyroclasm feel really, really good. It feels like it's meant to be played this way. It doesn't feel like it's not gonna feel the same with Night Fae. I'm just thinking to like shifting power and shit. It's not gonna feel the same. Mirrors of Torment feels so good. It's like a scuffed Lucid. It's great. Like on a pull, on a boss, like your fire blasts are just like, oh, you have another one. It's really, really nice. He's talented, yeah, of course. I get 1 minute busts Night Fae and single target. Not sure if you're talking about single target though. No, I was just talking in general. I think like the last I checked, which was a while back, combustion like was generally speaking around like 1:10 or 1:20 after the nerfs. Might have been like 107 or something. It just wasn't like you weren't able to get, I don't think even before that you were able to get to exactly a minute unless you're like really rolling with crits, but I might be wrong. Have you thought about the Venthyr specific legendary? Yes. And just to kind of go off topic, when we're able to wear 2 separate legendaries, I think Disciplinary Command is going to be the best second one, but it would be interesting to play with this as well. It would be really interesting. And I did like a really like napkin math calculation of this. Consuming a Fire Blast charges reduces Mirror's Torment by 4 seconds, okay? In this little, I don't know how long this was. How long was this test? 4 minutes and 38 seconds. Okay, in 4 minutes and 38 seconds, we casted 39 Fire Blasts, okay? Really rough napkin math. 39 Fire Blasts times 4. 156 divided by 60. That's 2.6 minutes. That's almost 2 free Mirrors of Torment. Almost. Meaning that if you're able to reduce Mirrors of Torment down to like a fucking 45-second cooldown, not to mention if it's dispelled, the cooldown's reduced by 45 seconds. Not to mention that. Just talking about the consuming Fire Blast. That means Mirrors of Torment would be a 45-second cooldown. Every 45 seconds, you're able to like use it and generate 3 Fire Blast charges. It'd be fucking insane. Like, it would be nuts. I would just be curious to see how that would work with Pyroclasm, Sun King's Blessing. Like, legit, if we are able to do 2 legendaries, I'm crafting this first. Like, I'm 1000% crafting this and I'm wearing it. And it's on legs and feet. Like, I'm gonna craft on my fucking boots or something. I don't know. But I think it would be really good if you could wear both. By itself, I don't think it's worth it. Over Sun Kings, no, definitely not. But when you're able to wear 2, if you're able to wear 2, I think they would have some serious synergy. Mirrors every 45 seconds, if that's what it actually is. Again, napkin math, no idea if that's actually correct. That means like every little mini combust that you have with Sun King's Blessing would almost have a mirrors, which means you'd have like almost 3 Fire Blast charges every time. Almost. Be pretty fucking sick. Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, it feeds into each other. It's like this fucking snake that eats its own tail. Like, you're using mirrors to give you more Fire Blast charges. Fire Blast charges reduce mirrors cooldown. Like, on a boss fight, like a 5-minute boss fight, I don't know how, like, I'd have to go back and look if I have something here. Plaguefall, Margrave boss fight. How many Fire Blasts did I use? 34. This is how long of a fight? 3 minutes. 34. 34 Fire Blasts times 4 seconds. 136 divided by 60. 2.2 minutes. I have an extra Mirrors of Torment. I almost have 2 Mirrors of Torments. And this number is not correct because if you have more mirrors, that means you have more Fire Blasts to use. So technically speaking, it would be like, yeah, almost 2 free mirrors out of that. And the single target damage is already nuts with this build. Imagine if you're able to do even more when you have more mirrors. Like, it'd just be gross. But that being said, I still think Disciplinary Command would be even stronger. Because you're literally adding 20% spell crit. But yeah. Firestorm 2. I mean, there's a lot of legendaries that would work well with this build, but Sinful, I think, is top contender. But yeah, again, any questions, feel free to when this is on YouTube, write them in the comments or whatever. The chef's kiss. Thanks, Osiris. I'm guessing you game the Pyroclasm with the Sun King? Ideally, yeah. Ideally, what you want to do is go into your Sun Kings with a Pyroclasm, yeah. If you can help it. There's situations where your Pyroclasm is going to wear off. Like, you have to keep in mind, Pyroblast is a 3.6 second cast. Sometimes your Pyroclasm is just not going to fill. My next little goal is to create a WeakAura that desaturates the Pyroblast icon when you can no longer cast it, so that you're not like casting it and like, oh, wait, I didn't actually get it off. Like, I want to make that. It's the last thing I want to do. And then I think I'll be done in terms of like visual stuff. I've got the tracker for the proc, like the stacks. I've got the tracker for the proc.
Don't move.
It used to say bait because I'm just baiting people when I play this, but wait.
Bait.
There you go. But yeah, so far I have not seen a single other person play this as Venthyr. If there are people, I would love to talk to them, know their thoughts. I've seen some Kyrian mages playing with Sun Kings for some reason. I don't know what's happening there, but that's also interesting. I've seen a lot of Night Fae mages playing with it. But again, I can't give you guys any like conclusive things because I haven't done Mythic with this. And there's not a single person playing Fire on Mythic that I can see that's playing with this. They're all playing Disciplinary Command. Oh wait, there's one. Couldn't you do Meteor instead? You could. You wouldn't play this though. How does this play in raids? Feels like it could be a little tricky to cast 4-second hard cast. No, it's not as bad as you think. Really, it really isn't. Like when you try it, it's really not that bad. You have, guys, like keep in mind, you have 2 shimmers, yeah? Like when you're casting a pyro, you're the only time you ever use shimmer is for movement. Like you don't ever need to like use shimmer to your advantage. And with Theatar, you have 2 Door of Shadows. You can use this twice for movement stuff. So you can even save shimmer charges for like, you know, mechanics that are predictable or something. It's crazy. But yeah, I mean, you're hard casting Pyroblast, like when you know the fight, you know mechanics, you find the time to cast them. It's never been an issue for me. Sometimes it happens where like you really get fucked. Like on Guardian, you're casting, you have no shimmer charges for some reason, and you get the bomb, and you're like, oh fuck, I gotta cancel it and run out. And by the time you run out, it's gone. You can't cast it anymore. It's like 2 seconds left. That sucks. It does happen, but that's with everything else too. Like any spec you play, you're gonna have those moments. So I don't consider that to be like an outlier, you know. Some of the top logs are SKB on Mythic. What boss? I see one guy, one Chinese guy on Eye of the Jailer. Lullaburst. Yeah, I mean, there's some people. There's a few people. Is it better than Fae? Like I said in the beginning of this whole thing, like I think Fae is all around better than this. I can't speak to how it plays with Fae though. I don't know anything about Sun King's Blessing Pyroclasm as Night Fae. I don't know about that. I think Night Fae, like Fire, the way it's normally played with Disciplinary Command and Kindling, I think is generally better than this. Has more use cases. This, my main thing with this is it's fucking strong for single target. It's very potent. And it can be very good for like niche cleave situations like on Remnant. Or not Remnant, Soul Render? Yeah, Soul Render. This boy. Like when the ads are coming out, you know they're coming out. You're like, okay, I'm at fucking 7 stacks, dude. Let's go. The ads get gripped in. You got your mini combusts. You got like Phoenix Flame charges. Like it's good for burst cleave like that if you can plan it properly. But it requires you to know how to play with the build. You know, it requires like pre-planning and prep. Like you need to keep it in the back of your head. Like, okay, this is coming up next. I want to be at like 7 stacks so that I can pyro the boss once, get 8, whatever. Gonna be on YouTube, right? Yeah, I'll be on YouTube. I'm gonna, when I get off, I'm gonna clip it and ship it. Hair looking sick, my man. Thanks, dude. All right, guys, I'm off. Stay safe, sleep well. I'll see you guys soon. Good night.